Good morning, Maryland. I'm at the church where Congressman Cummings worshiped for nearly 4 decades. Now, Bishop Walter Thomas, here's a live picture of the outside. We'll take you inside once the funeral gets started. From some of the biggest names in Democratic politics in this country for the last 30 years. Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren is here. She's going to read from the Old Testament. Winans is here. After those biblical readings, he'll perform a musical selection, and then the remarks from more political figures and family members of Congressman Cummings will begin. Now, the program lists, now, of course, the congressman who vacated the 7th seat in Maryland, 7th district seat back in 1996 to become the head of NAACP, Kweisi Mfume, will be up after that. Congressman Cummings won a special election to win Kweisi Mfume's seat and went to Washington. More speakers, including 2 of the congressman's children. Eventually, his wife, Maya Rockeymoore Cummings, will speak. She is also the chair of the Maryland Democratic Party. And then 2 former U.S. presidents, first Bill Clinton and then Barack Obama. All those remarks followed by that eulogy from the new psalmist pastor, Bishop Walter Thomas. And again, all the remarks from each speaker are scheduled to last 5 minutes. We'll see how they go. Several other prominent political figures not scheduled to speak, but who are in attendance include many of the Democrats running for president. We've seen the former Vice President Joe Biden walk into New Psalmist Baptist Church, the California Senator Kamala Harris, many others. WMAR2 News' Megan Knight is live in Northwest Baltimore this morning at New Psalmist Baptist Church. Megan, it is an emotional day in Baltimore.
It certainly is, Christian, but I gotta say, watching all the people who were lined up wanting to get into the New Psalmist Baptist Church this morning, there was almost a feeling of uplifting and jubilance and energy here. People so willing to share their stories about how they know Congressman Elijah Cummings, the impact that he's made on their lives. So really, even though this is a sad day, obviously, we're saying our final goodbyes to Congressman Cummings. I will say that a lot of the mourners here are just happy to be here today to really celebrate his life and not just remember him in death, but also celebrate his life and all the things that he did for Baltimore and for our nation. Now, I heard you listing some of the who's who that have been arriving here at the New Psalmist Baptist Church, and there's been quite a few big name politicians who have arrived here. You mentioned House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. She actually walked in hand with Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden. We also saw some other presidential candidates, including Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren. Senators Ben Cardin and Chris Van Hollen, they're here as well. We've seen some local leaders as well. Of course, Baltimore Mayor Jack Young is here, as well as City Council President Brandon Scott. Dr. Lena Wen, who used to be the Baltimore City Health Commissioner, went on to Planned Parenthood, no longer there, but she is also here this morning. Amy Klobuchar. Governor Hogan has arrived, Baltimore County Executive Johnny Olszewski. You know, again, just to name a few, they've just been kind of coming in one by one as we're getting ready to start the funeral for Congressman Cummings. Now, as for the people who were waiting in line, some of them here at 4 o'clock this morning trying to get a seat inside the sanctuary here at New Psalmist Baptist Church. They cut the line off around 9:15, 9:20. They started letting people in around 8:30 and just had that continuous flow of people going in. And, so 9:15, 9:20 is when they kind of cut it off, and people were still hoping that maybe they could just. So of course, at the moment, we are waiting for the main events of this funeral here, which would be former Presidents Barack Obama and Bill Clinton, as well as former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. They have not walked in yet. It's very likely that they're probably here, waiting in their cars to go into the church here, but we have not seen them as of right now. So of course, we'll keep our eyes on them, and once they get inside the church, I imagine that's when things will get started. So. Still, running a little bit behind schedule, but again, so many mourners who came here to celebrate the life of Elijah Cummings needed to get inside, and now we're getting everyone seated there. And once again, still waiting for a few people, namely former Presidents Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. So we're going to keep an eye on things here, Christian, let you know how things are progressing. But for now, we'll send it back over to you. Okay, Megan, thanks very much for that. Now, our regularly scheduled newscast, Good Morning Maryland, starts at 4:30. So I know you've been out there all morning. When you first arrived that early, people were already outside the church. Did you manage to talk to any of the people out there about, why they wanted to get there so early to celebrate the life of Congressman Cummings? Well, they wanted to make sure that they would get a spot, Christian. That was the main focus here. And like you said, we got here at 4 o'clock. There was mostly just media and law enforcement, but there were a couple people right at the entrance of the church there, and they just feel this deep connection with Congressman Elijah Cummings. And that's something that I heard from many people who I talked to standing in line. Even if they didn't know him personally, they felt some sort of connection with him and felt that he really did make a big impact here in Baltimore, and they felt that they just had to come here and stand in line for 3-4 hours just to try to get inside of that church and to be part of this day. Again, kind of like a celebration of life. I know it's a somber occasion, but really a lot of people were just so excited to talk about Cummings and to share their stories with him. Many people I know who say they grew up with him, went to school with him, worked with him in some capacity. So it was really important that they get here early and get in line. And like I said, they did have to cut off the crowd around 9:15. So there was probably, I'd say, close to 50, 60 people who were not able to get in. So getting here early was definitely key if you wanted to get inside the sanctuary to watch the funeral progress.
It is going to be an incredible scene and an emotional one out there. Megan Knight live in Northwest Baltimore for us outside New Psalmist Baptist Church. Thanks so much for those live reports. We'll check back in with you at 10. I want to read to you a statement from the former President Barack Obama, which was released shortly after the death of Elijah Cummings last week, that Thursday morning. Quote, "Michelle and I are heartbroken over the passing of our friend Elijah Cummings. As chairman of the House Oversight Committee, he showed us all not only the importance of checks and balances within our democracy, but also the necessity of good people stewarding it." Former President Barack Obama continues, "Steely yet compassionate, principled yet open to new perspectives. Chairman Cummings remained steadfast in his pursuit of truth and resolute when our country needed him the most." The former president continues, "May his example inspire more Americans to pick up the baton and carry it forward in a manner worthy of his service. Deepest sympathies and abiding love go to his wife Maya, 3 children, and all those whose lives he touched." That was the former president of the United States, Barack Obama, who is listed as one of the speakers. In fact, the final speaker to deliver remarks today. But then again, after the former president's remarks comes the bishop of New Psalmist Baptist Church, Walter Thomas, will be delivering remarks as well, the eulogy at the funeral of Elijah Cummings. Once
Standing, we prepare now for the requiem of a public servant, the Honorable Elijah Eugene Cummings. And it shall be done in a few moments after the draping of the coffin by the honor guard. Elijah Cummings was a churchman, and he ordered as his opening hymn, "The church's one foundation is Jesus Christ our Lord." We sang to the glory of God this morning that opening hymn that meant so much to him. You may be seated. Let us pray. Lord, we thank you for your servant from enemies both foreign and domestic. Lord, we thank you for one who stayed the same wherever he was, as he ironically embodied Kipling's command to walk with kings, yet not lose the common touch. Father, we praise you for Ruth and Robert Cummings, who raised him in the fear and admonition of the Lord Jesus Christ. Holy Spirit, we bless you that you live roles that grew out of concrete, a rock that refused to be overwhelmed by the rising tide of partisan rancor, and an oak that would not yield itself to the gust of intimidation sown by the tempest of corruption, fascism, and racism. We already did that, but we gather today for a homegoing celebration of a fallen soldier in the army of the Lord, a saint of God in the beloved. Therefore, we invoke your presence, we invite your spirit, and we inquire in your temple. And we say, come, Holy Spirit, come, heavenly dove, with all thy quickening power, and kindle a flame of sacred love in these cold hearts of ours. Lord, is always done to declare the unsearchable riches of your glorious gospel. In your name do we pray. Let the church say,
Psalm, King James Version, his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod, goodness, and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen.
The New Testament reading comes from 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 7 and 8. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the course. I have kept the faith. In the future, there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to those who have loved his appearing.
Elijah wrote his funeral program and determined who he wanted to do what. Some might be wondering why they're not doing anything. And so I just wanted to give you clarity. But one of the persons he loved to hear sing was B.B. Winans. And he's going to come now and bless us in song.
Morning. I learned in my personal loss of my brother Ronald and my dad is that I don't have to be strong. Because I learned that in my weakness, God's strength is made perfect. I said God's strength is made perfect. And today, we stand on his promise. And we stand on his word. After done all you can, after you've done all you can, I feel my help coming. After you've done all you can, after you've cried and prayed and done all you can. So tell me, what do you do when you've done all you can? Seems like it's never enough. Do you give when you've given your all? Watch the Lord see you through. After you've done all you can, you deal with the shame. Tell me, how can you survive when you've given your all? And it seems like you can't make it through. Well, you just stand when there's nothing left to do. You just stand and watch the Lord see you through. After you've done all you can, you just stand. And be not entangled in the bondage again. You just stand all that you can, and it seems like you can't make it through. Well, you just stand. You stand. Don't you dare give up. Don't you dare give in. We'll go through the storm, or we'll stand through the rain. weather the pain. Oh, he's gonna come through. Yes, he will. He promised he'll do what he said he would do. Yes, he will. That's the kind of God we serve. Yes, it is. After we've done all that we can, remember, Maya, after you've done all you can, together, y'all, we'll stand. Together we will stand. Oh, glory, glory. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Come on, put those hands together.
Hallelujah.
This is a celebration. After. Oh, yeah. God will see you through. After you've done all you can, you just stand. There were persons who meant so much to the work that Elijah did into his life. He asked that they might share some words at this moment. And I'm going to ask them to come in this order. The Honorable Hillary Rodham Clinton, former Secretary of State. The Honorable Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the United States House of Representatives. The Honorable Kwesi Mfume, Board Member Chairman of the Morgan State University. The Reverend Dr. Alfred Vaughn from the clergy. Mr. Larry Gibson, his mentor. And then Deaconess Margaret Ann Howie from New Psalmist Baptist Church. Secretary Clinton, won't you give her a hand as she comes?
This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Because this is the day for the homegoing celebration of a great man, a moral leader, and a friend. To Bishop Walter Scott Thomas and First Lady of the Church, Patricia Thomas, and the new Psalmist Baptist Church, thank you for welcoming us all here to reflect on the life and celebrate the service of Elijah Cummings. And to the Cummings family, to his political family, the constituents from the Maryland Congressional 7th District, thank you for sharing him with our country and the world. And as you have said so beautifully, you walked by Elijah's side on this journey. Thank you for your steadfastness, your resilience, and your leadership. It is no coincidence, is it, that Elijah Cummings shared a name with an Old Testament prophet, whose name meant in Hebrew, "The Lord is my God."
and who used the power and the wisdom that God gave him to uphold the moral law that all people are subject to, and because of all people are equal. Like the prophet, our Elijah could call down fire from heaven. But he also prayed and worked for healing. He weathered storms and earthquakes, but never lost his faith. Like that Old Testament prophet, he stood against corrupt leadership of King Ahab and Queen Jezebel. And he looked out for the vulnerable among us. He lifted up the next generation of leaders. He even worked a few miracles. And he kept reminding us, life is no dress rehearsal. The American people want to live their lives without fear of their leaders. And as leaders, we have a responsibility to keep the promises made in running for office to make the lives of Americans better. As Elijah said, while we're all on this earth, that's my message. Our Elijah was a fierce champion for truth, justice, and kindness in every part of his life. His integrity and character, his can-do spirit, made him a guiding light in the Congress. He pushed back against the abuse of power. He was unwavering in his defense of our democracy. He had little tolerance for those who put party ahead of country or partisanship above truth. But he could find common ground with anyone willing to seek it with him. And he liked to remind all of us that you can't get so caught up in who you are fighting that you forget what you are fighting for. Even his political adversaries recognized that it wasn't really about politics for our Elijah. He led from his soul. He often said that our children are a message to a future we will never see. I saw that firsthand when I attended an event for the Elijah Cummings youth program in Israel. A leadership program for young people in his district. And Elijah didn't just put his name on the program and then forget about it. He interviewed every applicant. He was personally invested in their success. He wanted all of us to see our young people as he memorably asked us to do when he gave the eulogy at the funeral for Freddie Gray. Did you see him? By the time these young people came back from Israel to Baltimore, they had celebrated Shabbat, studied Hebrew, hiked up Masada. They had seen and been seen and made lifelong friends, all because Elijah Cummings knew from his own experiences that it's one thing to learn abstractly about the world, but another to experience it with people different from yourself, learning from each other, lifting each other up. You know, Elijah often said his philosophy was simple: do something. Go out and do something. No matter how daunting a problem seems, no matter how helpless you feel, surely there is something you can do. I think that remains his challenge to each of us. As he said, even if it seems small, there's usually something you can do if you are looking for it. You can defend the truth. You can defend democracy. You can lift up others. And toward the end of his life, he said, I am begging the American people to pay attention to what is going on. Because if you want to have a democracy intact for your children and your children's children and generations yet unborn, we have got to guard this moment. This is our watch. Our Elijah knew, because he was a man of faith and a man of the church, that life was fleeting and precious. And that's why he worked so hard to make every moment of his life count. When we're dancing with the angels, the question will be asked, he said, in 2019, what did we do to make sure we kept our democracy intact? I will end with the paraphrase of a poem that Elijah recited in his very first speech in the Congress. He said that he told himself this poem as many as 20 times a day. I only have a minute, 60 seconds in it. Forced upon me, I did not choose it, but I know that I must use it. Give account if I abuse it, suffer if I lose it. Only a tiny little minute, but eternity is in it. Thank you, Elijah Cummings, for your work, your service, and the lessons you leave us. God bless you.
Good morning, Baltimore. Thank you, Bishop Thomas, for bringing us under this beautiful auspices to pay tribute to our darling, precious Elijah. Mr. President, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President. Madam Secretary, Archbishop Lori, Bishop, members of the clergy, distinguished guests who are all here for our darling Elijah. As Speaker of the House, I have the sad honor and personal privilege to bring the condolences of the entire Congress of the United States to Maya, the Cummings family, the people, the constituents of Elijah's district, people of Baltimore, to our entire country. I say that with great authority because yesterday, my friends and those of you who loved Elijah, yesterday, Maya gave us the privilege of having a celebration of Elijah's life in the capital of the United States. The first African-American lawmaker ever to serve in repose, lie in repose in the capital of the United States. It was so beautiful. And as has been referenced, Elijah brought people together in life of different parties and in his death of different parties. And that's why I'm so pleased that yesterday's service was very bipartisan. In fact, it took bipartisan agreement for Elijah to lie in repose on the same catapult that Abraham Lincoln lay in repose in the Capitol. And so today we have a very strong House in a bipartisan fashion. Please rise to be recognized. And their families and their staff, Elijah's staff. John Lewis, where are you, John Lewis? And we had a strong representation from the United States Senate in a bipartisan way yesterday. Today also led by Ben Cardin and Chris Van Hollen, bringing so many senators here today. Bishop Thomas, how brilliant was it of Elijah's parents to name him Elijah? As the secretary said, the Lord, the God is my Lord. And as we know from the Old Testament, there is a tradition to leave a seat at the table for Elijah who might show up. But our Elijah always made a seat at the table for others. He made a seat at the table for children who needed an education, for even new members of Congress so that he could mentor them, for all who wanted to be part of the American dream. How blessed are we all to know him and to benefit from his friendship and his leadership. Elijah was a proud man, proud of his heritage, proud of Baltimore, and proud of America. Elijah used was when we were not meeting the needs of children in our country, he said, "We are better than this." He held himself to a high standard, and that is why I've called him the North Star of Congress, our guiding light. Thank you, Maya, for giving me for Congressman Parren Mitchell, a sad and proud day for the Baltimore community and our country that day. Paying tribute to Parren was both an official and a personal honor. My D'Alessandro family and the Mitchell family have been friends for generations. Now it is my great honor and personal sadness to join you at the new Psalmist Baptist Church. I said this was appropriate because Elijah was master of the house. Master of the house. He was there to make the future for our children, whom he called, as has been said, our living messengers to a future we will never see. But he wanted for those children to have a future worthy of their aspirations, and he wanted them to have a future built on our values, continue to be built on our families. And as a master of the house, he was also the mentor of the house. Does anybody in here be mentored by Elijah Cummings? I think so. It was no surprise that when we had this election and we won the Congress that Elijah said, "Send me as many freshmen as you can because I want to help them be oriented to reach their fullest potential in the House of Representatives." So wonderful that he did that. And all members, whether new or not, benefited from the generosity of his spirit, sometimes the candor of how we do our work. Whether we asked or not, the candor was there. And again, it was an honor to share, again, some of these thoughts about our dear Elijah. Elijah, he fought for what is right. By his brilliance, knowledge, and legal prowess, he made a difference in so many ways, fighting for gun violence prevention expanding opportunity for everyone, recognizing, now this was most recent, recognizing the cost of prescription drugs hurt the health and economic well-being of America's working families. He was willing to reach across the aisle, even across the Capitol, lower cost right now. Our Baltimore connection gave me special entree into the thinking, Elijah's thinking, which helped me as speaker. Our love of the Orioles and the Ravens made it fun. Thank you, Baltimore, for your contribution to the greatness of the United States of America. One of the things that Elijah, my brother Tommy, and I, being from Baltimore, and I representing San Francisco, had to tell them in San Francisco, for us, love means letting other versions exist. And that's sharing Elijah with us and for loving him so much. You were the source of his strength and inspiration. I hope it is a comfort to you that so many people mourn your sad loss. Enter, Master of the House, North Star, Mr. Chairman, Master of the House, may he rest in peace, Elijah Cummings. Thank you all so much.
Good morning. Bishop Walter Thomas, my friend. President Obama, President Clinton, Vice President Biden, Secretary of State Clinton, Governor Hogan, Mayor Jack Young, distinguished clergy and all the pulpit guests that are all over the place, and ladies and gentlemen, Maya, those of us who are Elijah's friends but you would come to love him most. Please accept as you see. Our prayers go out to his siblings, to his really write it down. His woods filled with snow. Yes, those woods are lovely, dark, and deep, but I have promises to keep. And energy and everything he did and how he actually lived these all over the country and then challenged us to dare to make a difference. Elijah and I spent a lot of time in the last couple of years privately just talking about our own life, our own death, our own humanity, our own mortality, our own funerals. And whether he was going to go before me or I was going to go before them. And because I was 3 years older than Elijah, so you may have to get in line. Sometimes out of the blue, he'd call me, just sticking it to me. So Kwesi, what's it like now that you turned 40? Of course, Elijah was 37. Well, what's it like when you turn 60? Of course, he was 57. We used to call each other unannounced sometimes on birthdays just to say birthday, but we didn't do it with regularity because we wanted it to be different and a surprise. And I would get those calls and enjoyed every one of them. Surprised, if he was going to call this year or 4 years later. And he would. And yesterday was my birthday, and I did not hear from my friend. I met Elijah in the spring of 1979. I was a young talk show host and had launched a campaign to run for city council. Elijah was a young lawyer and precinct marshal working with the Democratic Club headed by Senator Clarence Mitchell III and Mike Mitchell and Delegate and soon-to-be State Senator Larry Young and John Jeffries and Delegate Lena K. Lee. The political godfather and mentor to both Elijah and myself was, as you heard Nancy speak earlier, about the revered Congressman Perrin J. Mitchell. It was both It was both the Mitchell family and the Cole Murphy family of the Afro-American newspaper that really moved our communities along. They organized, they directed us on politics, on inclusion, how to fight for rights, both civil and political. And so Elijah sat at parents' feet and I sat at his feet. And we listened and we learned. And we began to get involved, going all the way back to the campaign of Hubert Humphrey, when neither of us knew what we were doing except passing out bumper stickers that said, "Vote for Humphrey." Elijah was being brought along and tutored, as I said, by the Mitchell Club. I was being brought along and tutored by the late State Senator Verda Welcome, who was the first black woman in America ever to be elected to a state senate, So despite those organizational allegiances, Elijah and I became political buddies, trying to run for the city council with no money at all. And I knew and he knew, even though he didn't say it and we didn't discuss it at that time, that one day Elijah, in the not too distant future, would be running for himself. I would go on later that year to get elected to the city council, winning by 3 votes. And Elijah, who had met my grandmother, thought it was funny. They came to me and said, "Now, Clacy, as long as you are black," which meant the rest of my life, got started, it would be a gross understatement of where he really began. That shaping and that beginning started in the home of Robert and Ruth Cummings, where young Elijah learned the basics of life for the rest of his life. It was an uncompromising understanding of who he was and whose he would forever be. And I don't know that in the many years we've known each other that Elijah ever gave a speech around me or had a conversation with me where he did not mention his mother or his father and the lessons of humility that gave him strength. I remember kneeling beside him at his mother's funeral service. You could look in his eyes that day and see the enormous sense of loss. You could always sense that at that moment that her spirit had entered into him, one another, that this is not a perfect nation and that we are not perfect people, but that God calls all of us in America to a perfect mission. Elijah believed it and he lived it. He was the twitch, thrust from his mother's womb as he was in the middle of an evolving civil rights movement, a movement of black renaissance, and like many of us were buoyed by the revolutionary talent of that day. Intisaka Shange, Gil Scott-Heron, the Last Poets, Nikki Giovanni, Hakeem Mahabuti, Sonia Sanchez, and so many others. And through it all, he realized that the road less traveled was, in fact, the one less certain, but that's the one he knew that he would be on anyway. Distinctiveness of the bumblebee or the orderliness of the cosmo. I have to have the faith to believe in what others see as being impossible. And he would repeat that. He would repeat the poet and say, "I shall not shout my faith. 3 times eloquent are the quiet trees and the glistening sod. Hushed are the stars, whose power is never spent." He said, "The mills and the hills are mute, and yet dream." It was also the dream of Martin Luther King and Fannie Lou Hamer, the dream of Du Bois and Washington and Tubman and Douglass, the dream of all those nameless and faceless sharecroppers of his father's generation who laid their bodies down on plantations all over this country so that young Elijahs could run across them and get to the promised land. They couldn't always speak the King's English. They didn't have college degrees to celebrate. His sacrifices and achievements remind us, students, that Crevel was right when he said that no daring is fatal, that Sartre was right when he said the maximum hope would always lie closest to the maximum danger, that Dr. King was right, Elijah, when he said for the true believers, the darkness would be light enough. So So how do we celebrate him today? How do we honor him as we get ready to recommit his soul and spirit back to God? Not by trinkets or false praise or ceremony or adoration. Those things never meant anything to Elijah. We honor him instead by holding on to his example of commitment to a cause and by making it real in our own lives. He was unawed by opinion, unseduced by flattery, undismayed by disaster. He confronted life with the courage of his convictions and then confronted death with the courage of his faith. He taught us all how to hope and how to smile, how to laugh and how to cry. He taught us how to live, and with grace and dignity, he has now taught us without hate, a friend without treachery, a victor without oppression, and a victim sometimes without murmuring. But above all, to those who knew and loved him, he was simply a good man with a good heart. One final thing. My preference would be for Elijah to be standing here right now, talking and speaking about me. But he said, you know, Kwesi, there is neither rank nor station nor prerogative in the Republic of the grave. And yet I know in a few minutes we prepare to this time we spoke. You said, Kwesi, when peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrow like sea billows roll, whatever thy lot, stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. And yet those woods are lovely, dark, and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I
Won't you give our graveyard at a certain time? So for all who are yet coming, be very mindful. If you see me stand, we are moving forward. Thank you so very much.
We come today to honor one of the greatest soldiers of Christ that has ever lived. Elijah was not only in the halls of Congress, but he was also a real Christian. It was nothing to have him show up in worship, and like his mother and father before him, he was a worshiper. He served the Lord with gladness. And so we come today to celebrate his life and to say to him, thank you for everything that you've done, particularly for the oppressed and the underprivileged. We said to him, bon voyage, we'll see you in the morning.
How humbling, 1969. Elijah was at 18 as president concluded that the school should add some diversity to the average age of the inductees was about 60 years old. But Elijah persisted. He argued that the selection criteria should be changed because the school had excluded black students up until Brown versus Board of Education, and that it would take decades before there were any African American alumni in their 60s. Well, Elijah's relentless advocacy prevailed. and I became the beneficiary. And I was selected to the school's Hall of Fame. Now, I was 27 years old. And my only claim to fame was that Speaker Pelosi's brother, Mayor Tommy D'Alessandro III, had appointed me to the Baltimore School Board. I first met Elijah at the Hall of Fame induction ceremony. I still have the printed program. Here it is. It is dated March the 26th, 1969. Elijah on the program is listed as the president of the class, a member of the Hall of Fame Selection Committee, and the Assembly Chairman. Elijah and I have been close friends ever since that day. After high school, Elijah's steps were like mine. He went to Howard University and was president of the student government. Then he came to the University of Maryland School of Law, where I was teaching. That led me, jokingly, had existed since 1934, and the association's president was usually a senior member of the bar. That was until Elijah Cummings, a lawyer for 7 years, became its president. When Elijah began his career in elected office, that's when that "are you following me around" question vanished. He sailed way past me and way ahead. There were his terms in the Maryland General Assembly, and then his years in Congress, where he fought to protect our democracy, encouraged young people, and looked out for his hometown, Baltimore. He purchased 22,500 lawn signs and had them posted in every Maryland county. His name was not on any of the signs. They said simply, "Vote for the Democrats." Over the years, Elijah and I talked a lot, and we talked about everything. It seems like everybody. So let me share just a few close. He genuinely believed the things that he said publicly. Elijah was kind and respectful to people of all stations in life. And he was sad when he thought that he had some Maya. He often said, "Maya is a genius." In fact, those were his 2 words for you, beautiful genius. I spoke with Elijah over the past few months many times. And as his health faded, he continued fighting for justice with the same persistence as that 18-year-old student who, in 1969, was determined to integrate his high school.
I am honored this morning to speak on behalf of the New Psalmist Baptist Church and to speak about Brother, a CME member. He didn't come on just Christmas, Mother's Day, and Easter. But Brother Elijah was here. He posted just about every week. And not only was he here, but he was a 7:15 a.m. member. And Sister Maya, you know you have to have good religion to come to church every week at 7:15 a.m. But Brother Elijah loved worship, and he loved this with him. Brother Elijah did not come here to be seen. He came to see his God. He carried us with him through the halls of power. He carried our prayers with him when he sat in those committee meetings. He was one of us. And because he carried us with him, we now get to carry him with us. Brother Elijah's spiritual DNA is now a part of our church family tree. And we will carry him with us. We will carry him when we speak truth to power. We will carry him when we give a voice to the voiceless. We will carry him when we, as the church of the living God, refuse to sit down. Because the church, like Brother Elijah Cummings, does not yield. If we die on Friday, we're going to get raised up again on Sunday. Farewell, Brother Elijah. We will miss you. We know you are dancing with the angels and with young Tommy. And we look forward to seeing you in the morning when our work is done. God bless you.
Now behold the Lamb. Elijah's family plays an integral part in his life. And his family members are coming first led by his daughters, then his brother. Two of his mentees are going to speak. A member from his congressional staff is going to speak. And then his wife, Maya, is going to speak. Won't you come in that order?
I knew this day would come, but I never thought it would be so soon. My dad and I had a special bond, one that spanned the 37 years of my life and the 37 years of his life of public service. Our connection was and remains one of heart, spirit, and soul. It is almost impossible to put that connection into words, but I am deeply grateful for it. And today, I just want to say thank you, Daddy. So I've written you a letter, Dad, to express my gratitude to you for a lifetime of lessons, memories, and blessings. Recently, you said my handwriting was getting too small, so like in recent times, I would like to read this note of thanks to you aloud. Except today, Daddy, all these people have gathered to celebrate your life, so it's not just you and me. I hope as always to make you proud. Dear Dad, over the past week, Baltimore, the nation, and the world have celebrated your life and your contributions to our collective humanity. You were so many things to so many people. You touched so many lives, and that's because yours was one not only of duty and service, but one of compassion and empathy. You truly saw people, and they saw you. No matter their lot in life, no matter their politics, no matter anything that made them different from you. As you often said to me, thank you for just being you. You were the gift, and I have much to be grateful for. And while you were Congressman, Mr. Chairman, and a seasoned political leader, perhaps the most important title you held in your 68 years of life on this earth was Dad. First, thank you for loving me before I even took my first breath in this world. I remember you telling me how when I was born, you were amazed that you could hold me in the palm of your hand. Just one hand, this life, my life, in your hand. You and Mom literally gave me life, and we've shared an unbreakable connectedness ever since, which is what makes today so incredibly hard. While right now the words ring hollow in my heart, where since last Thursday I feel like a piece has been forcefully torn out, it is this connection and this deep and abiding love that endures even when I can no longer feel your big bear hug or give you a kiss on your forehead. Dad, thank you for teaching me the dual power of my beauty and my brilliance. This might sound boastful, but ever since I was a little girl, my dad always told me I was beautiful. That may sound basic and like a no-brainer. But Dad wanted me to understand and appreciate my blackness and truly feel that my rich brown skin was just as beautiful as alabaster or any shade of the rainbow. He insisted on buying me brown dolls that looked like me so that I could truly appreciate myself and what made me different, from the width of my nose to the fullness of my lips and to the coarseness of my hair. Now, as Dad would say often in speeches, just a footnote here, I vividly remember being on the playground in elementary school and a classmate calling me ugly, to which I retorted, well, my daddy says I'm beautiful. I then proceeded to pull out his business card from my little purse, filled literally with nothing else but rocks, and said, you can call my dad and ask him. So thank you, Dad, for also teaching me to be bold, to be confident, and to stand in my power, to stand up against bullies, be it their overt words or covert actions. You did not suffer fools, and you taught me not to either. Thank you for teaching me discernment, to spot those with false motives from miles away, and to see the difference between blind ambition and true purpose and being called to a mission. Thanks for teaching me what leadership by example means by exhibiting it. And just to circle back on Blackness and Brilliance, Daddy, thank you for encouraging Adia and me to attend Howard University, your alma mater. You once quipped in a speech at Howard's Chapel the year before I enrolled that no matter where I decided to go to college, your tuition checks would be going to Howard. Thank you for investing in my education well before and through Howard. Thank you for teaching me to persevere. I remember when we took the training wheels off my bike when I was maybe 6 or so, and I went careening down the steep sloped alleyway behind the house and fell. I remember crying to you and telling you that I didn't want to ride ever again, and you told me that I could do it, and to wash off my scraped little legs and try again, and I did. Thank you for teaching me that I do know. You used to ask me questions on the way to school, and lazily, or maybe out of a lack of confidence in the answer, I'd just say, I don't know. You tell me, Jennifer, you do know. So tell me, what do you think? You always cared what I thought. That never stopped. From our first conversations to our last. Thank you for teaching me to strive for excellence in all that I do. Thank you for instilling in me the idea that if I tried my very best, that is all I could ask of myself. Thank you for giving me an appreciation for the spoken and written word. I remember many a day, either in your law office on St. Paul Street or your office in the State House in Annapolis, where I'd be tasked with reading articles from the Baltimore Sun and summarizing them. On those summaries, the best score I could get was an E for excellent, and I always aimed for those. That summary writing led to writing for school newspapers in high school and college, and the career in communications I have now. It is no coincidence, it was preparation. Daddy, thank you for seeing me. I saw you. Thank you for nurturing me. I think I nurtured you in return. Thank you for loving me unconditionally and teaching me what love and leadership are by your example. I will miss your smile, your great big smile that could light up a room. I will miss your booming voice that would firmly sound, Jennifer, when I knew I was in trouble. I will also miss the voice that was just quiet and plain, saying things like, Jen, can you plug in my phone? I will miss calling you after seeing you on TV to tell you what a great job you did, and maybe sharing a couple of pieces of constructive feedback for your consideration, because you always strive to be better than the day before. You encouraged me to have a point of view and a thoughtful critique. I will miss you calling me before dawn on my birthday to sing your very special renditions of Happy Birthday, complete with a lot of riffs and soul, but perhaps not a steady tune. I will miss our exchanging Christmas presents and you immediately trying on whatever sweater or Under Armour tee or fleece was a part of the gift. I will miss opening presents from you and you saying, I saw it and it just looked like you. I will miss us having brunch, just us two, or you, me, and Adia, or you, me, and Mom, and ordering dessert and you eating more than half of it. Every time, it reminded me of us going to the harbor and getting ice cream when I was a kid. Secretly, Dad, I started getting bubblegum ice cream because I thought that finally when you asked for just a bite, I might get the cone back intact. What I would give for just an afternoon at the harbor with you. You could have all of the ice cream, Dad. I will miss the way you squeezed so much ketchup onto pretty much everything, but especially the fries that ended up soggy with tomatoey goodness at the bottom. I will miss your wise words. I will miss our brief conversations between meetings and hearings, and I will miss the longer ones. I will miss our month or so long of recent Saturday night sleepovers when we just hung out and discussed just about everything in our lives. Sometimes we just stay silent and watch the latest 2020 murder mystery. I'd look over to you just to see your face and catch you catching a glimpse of mine. That is love, enduring love. We weren't just dad and daughter, we were confidants and friends, and Daddy, I will miss that the most. So on this day, after so much has been said in a week filled with celebrations of your life, to steal a phrase from you, I just stopped by today to tell you how much I love you, how much I thank you, and how much I will be indebted and forever connected to you. That does not change as you've transitioned from this life to the next. Our love endures. Rest well and rest easy, Daddy. You deserve it. I know our conversations and connections won't be in person anymore, but they will be just as they've always been, filled with heart, spirit, and soul. I love you, Dad. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. You'll have to forgive me, I'm reading off of my phone. I am a millennial, after all. So I want to thank everyone for being here. It means the world to my family to know what our father, brother, uncle, son meant to his community and his colleagues and the people he worked with. And I have to say to his staff, can you please stand up to my dad's staff if you're here? They deserve it. I just want to personally thank all of you. The way that you loved my father makes us family forever. And I'm so sorry that you lost someone who was so much more than a boss to you. So, I'm confident that everyone in this room today knows exactly the type of man my father was. If you didn't, you wouldn't be here. He was a passionate leader, a dependable friend, and an unrelenting voice for change. His passion for his city, his state, and his country was evident in his practices and his policies. Many of his colleagues have spoken over the past week and today about what an honor and a privilege it was to serve with him. But my sister and I were fortunate enough to hold the highest honor, which was being able to call him Dad. And I would be remiss if I didn't share, and I could tell that he was happy to hear from me. And he was never persistence. When I was getting ready to take my driving test, he made me parallel park, that if I said I was going to do something, that I did it, and always encouraged me to be more giving. He instilled in me the same principles that he went out of his way, even from his sickbed, to make sure that I could go see her. And committed to my happiness and well-being at all times. Last year, the way my dad saw me, the way God sees me, without limitations, not bound by obstacles or circumstances, and with the power to determine my own destiny. My dad not only encouraged me, he empowered me. He equipped me with the tools that have prepared me to stand here with you today. And he made it his life's mission to. In his infamous first speech on the House, you own it. You better never let it go. You only get one shot. Do not miss your chance. The opportunity comes. And to all of you, when the time comes, I hope that you seize yours as well.
At times it was easy, other times it wasn't. I followed him into middle school, and most of you know Bobby. Elijah went to Baltimore City College. By the way, I call him Bobby. The family calls him Bobby. People have asked me, about 100 people have asked me over the last week why we call him that. And it's because his godmother didn't like the name City. He said, Al, okay, let me explain that one. My name is James, my middle name is Alfred, but they call me Al for short. Okay. He said, Al, you really should go to City. It's an all-boys school, so you have no distractions. Yeah. So I said, I said, Bobby, I love distractions. I said, I can't concentrate without distractions. That's when I learned the definition of oxymoron, or better yet, ironic. And that's when he taught me the definition of ironic. But he was a great brother. We're going to miss him dearly. I want to thank the city of Baltimore. I want to thank Speaker Pelosi for the service yesterday, all the comments that were made. I mean, it was a beautiful service. I'm going to miss him dearly. And the last thing I want to say is that when I was leaving his home yesterday, after returning back from Washington, I was getting in my car, and there was a gentleman sitting on the steps, and he asked me, "Where are you coming from?" And I told him, "From my brother's house, Elijah Cummings." And he was so apologetic. He said, "I am so sorry. I'm so sorry." He just felt really bad. He just wanted to give me a hug. So he said, "I'll do anything you need me to do." He said, "I'll cut your grass." He asked me, he said, "Where do you live?" I said, "Virginia." He said, well, he thought for a second or two, and he said, "Well, that might be a problem." But he did tell me that he was going to meet me out there today again. He had something for me. I'm not sure if I'll be able to meet with him or not, but I thought that was the nicest thing, because he's the type of person. He was the type of person that Elijah loved. Elijah wasn't the type of person who would look up to people and want to be so high. He wanted to be in a position where he could help those people who couldn't help themselves. And so again, I just want to thank everybody. My niece already thanked the staff, and the reason why I was going to thank them was because during my last meeting with Elijah, I spent an entire Sunday with him about 4 weeks ago, which really wasn't the last time. I've seen him since then. But I spent Sunday with him watching the Chiefs play the Ravens. The Ravens lost. But he had a question for me. The question was, for those of you who don't know, I lost a son. My son was killed about 8 years ago. He was a student down at Old Dominion. And that haunted Elijah for most of his life, for the rest of his life. He asked me, he said, "Why did Christopher go to Old Dominion?" And I said, "Well, because his friends wanted to go there. He wanted to go with his friends." And he said, "Man, I wish he had gone to Old Dominion. That broke me to my heart when he was killed." And that wasn't the first time he told me that. He's told me that many times. And the only thing that he took to his grave that was unresolved was who took my son's life. So hopefully that will turn around here sometime soon. But again, I want to thank each and every one of you, because you can give someone your car, you can let them borrow your keys, you can let them borrow your home, your clothes, whatever the case may be. But the one thing that you cannot get back is time. And each and every one of you have given up hours of your time just to honor my brother. And for that, I am eternally grateful. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is John Alexander. We've lost a giant and an incredible friend, and I'm honored to be here this morning to say a few words about my friend, Congressman Elijah Cummings. We've all read a lot of beautiful eulogies about this great man, but I'm going to try to tell you a few things that maybe you didn't know. He used to tease me relentlessly. Like you, President Clinton, he called me an honorary brother. I met Congressman Cummings in 1996. I was lucky enough to be on his first legislative staff. And for the next 23 years, we developed a very close personal relationship. We met almost weekly for lunch to discuss family, politics, books, life, even the Ravens and the Orioles. One day, Mr. Cummings was late for votes. And this was in the infancy of cell phones, and I couldn't reach him. Later in the day, one of my colleagues came up to me and said, "Hey, I saw your boss changing a tire on Route 95. What, excuse me? No, your boss was on 95 changing somebody's tire. I saw him by the side of the road. He never said a word to me while he was late, and that's just the way he was. Mr. Cummings always said 80% of life is showing up. All of you had somewhere else to be today, but you're here. I try to teach that to my son, who's 16, who's here today. Took him out of school. I think that's an excused absence. And I see many of my colleagues and friends here today, and I hope I convey a bit of my feelings in my talk as well. And we all had a very special relationship with this great man. I see a lot of friends from his early political days, those that saw his potential, those that urged him to run for Congress, and I see friends who served him during this journey. And I'm truly, truly grateful for this opportunity to speak. He always said he was an ordinary man doing an extraordinary job. However, he was not an ordinary man. He was a brilliant man. He was born to lead, and he served for all the right reasons. He was a gifted orator. He could make audiences shout with enthusiasm and cry at the same time. He was a voice of moral leadership. He had a wonderful sense of humor. He had an infectious laugh. You couldn't help but to laugh with him once he started laughing. He was a humble man. He never professed to know it all. He was always learning, always studying, always asking questions. He genuinely cared about people and his staff. About 20 years ago, I was unhappy in a job. I was almost between jobs, and I called Congressman Cummings and I wanted some advice. I was about to quit my job, and I'll never forget the words he said to me that day. "I won't let you fall. I won't let you fall." He spoke of the kitchen crowd. He meant the people during parties, gatherings, who would hang out in the kitchen and complain. He wasn't a kitchen crowd guy. He was generally not concerned or motivated by money or titles. He was a man who straddled two worlds. Maybe I helped him bridge the gap from inner Baltimore and state legislature to the halls of Congress. Maybe he leaned on me that way in the beginning, but he helped me too. He helped me understand the world through the eyes of an African-American man. He taught me lifelong lessons on compassion, humility, love, family, and God. I will miss his fatherly advice. I will miss his brotherly love. I will miss his wisdom and compassion. When my father died, he attended the funeral. He took the time and called my mother. And when I was struggling with the death of my father, he spoke to me about a musical he loved, one of which I saw with him for the first time, The Lion King. Remember these words? He lives in you. He lives in me. He watches over everything we see. Into the water, into the truth. In your reflection, he lives in you. And if I have a message to everyone today when you leave this beautiful church, When we face the challenges and temptations of everyday life, think, do I want to be part of the kitchen crowd? What would Congressman Cummings do in this situation? So please honor the memory of this good man. Open the door for someone. Carry someone's groceries. Shovel your neighbor's walk. Be a mentor to a young person. Maybe stop and change somebody's tire. Thank you.
Good morning. The first time I met Congressman Cummings, we stood together not far from here to call attention to the 20-year difference in life expectancy across our city. He called on us to do the work that's so much bigger than us. That's about our children and the generations yet unborn. When we finished, he wrote down his number. And he leaned close and said, "Call me. You hear me? I will help you with whatever you need to help our city." And he did. Whenever we needed funding for mental health, dental health, child health, violence prevention, any program to help our residents, Congressman Cummings fought for us and he got us the resources. He told everyone how we in Baltimore are effective and efficient. How what we do is about saving lives. And he came to countless events to speak on the opioid epidemic because we needed his moral authority to overcome stigma and treat addiction as the disease that it is. And every time, he would speak to every member of my team to say thank you. He'd say thank you for turning your pain into your passion that is your purpose. And he told them, as I heard him tell his staff, whom he loved so much, and the young people that he mentored, he would say, "I want you to replace me someday." And he'd look right at each person. And in his presence, we know that we are seen, we're heard, and we matter. When I suffered a personal tragedy, a miscarriage, he wrote to me to say that he and Maya were there for me. When I went through other challenging times, he'd remind me that for every season, there's a reason. And we may not know that reason, and there's a lot that we cannot control. But what's in our control is how we choose to live the life that we have, and how we must always let our conscience guide our conduct. When I eventually had my baby, he quoted the poet Carl Sandburg that a baby is God's opinion that life should go on. And he thanked me for helping God to deliver this powerful message. And when I told Congressman Cummings that my husband and I decided to name that baby, our son, after him, when I told him, he cried. Little Eli is now 2. And one day expecting his baby sister in a few months. But there have been few months in his life when I haven't gotten some message or call asking about him. "How's the baby?" he'd say. "How's my little Eli doing?" And what would be my last conversation with him, I told him how blessed I have been to have his mentorship. And he said, I am the one who is blessed because you are part of my destiny as I am a part of yours. Now, all of us here are forever part of Congressman Cummings' destiny as he is forever a part of ours. All of us who are fortunate to call him our mentor, our friend, our colleague, all of us who are fortunate to love him and be loved by him. He challenged us to be better, and we are all better for knowing him. Now today we feel the deep pain over his loss. We feel the deep pain for his one and only beloved Maya, for his daughters that he always calls the gifts that keep on giving, for his entire family whom he loved so deeply. We feel the deep pain for the loss of this great man who has touched every part of our city and everyone in our city. Well, I believe that Congressman Cummings would ask us to turn that pain into our passion that is our purpose. I believe he would ask us to honor his life's legacy by carrying on his life's work and making it our own. I believe he would ask us to call upon our better angels and think about the work that is bigger than us, so much bigger than us. That's about our children and the generations yet unborn. That's about fulfilling our shared destiny to fight for the world as it should be. To Congressman Elijah Eugene Cummings, we love you. We thank you. May we be worthy of you, and may you rest in peace.
First, giving honor to God, to the family, respected dignitaries, and extended friends. I sincerely appreciate the honor and privilege to express my deep appreciation for my friend, Congressman Elijah Cummings. The remarks that I will give on today are entitled, The Final Lesson. When I think of the Congressman, I'm reminded of a quote from Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee once said, "The key to immortality is living a life worth remembering." The Congressman asked me one day to drive him to DC for meetings and votes. At first, I thought this would be a temporary assignment that would last a few days. Little did I know that this would turn into 2.5 years of working with an angel. Suddenly, my life transformed from district director to bodyguard, mechanic, advisor, driver, chef. The Congressman would ask me what we eat for lunch. And most importantly, friend. I worked with the Congressman for 15 years, and he always took the time to teach me and the staff valuable life lessons. However, the last 2.5 years were different. He once told me, he said, "Spikes, if you give me 5 minutes, I can teach you something that took me 20 years to learn." Let that marinate for a second. Most of the lessons you may think were verbal, but I learned more from watching the Congressman than I did in conversation. Lesson number 1, compassion and kindness. The Congressman believed that empathy resided in all of us. He thought that compassion and kindness brought us closer to God. He believed that those attributes were the key to uniting the human spirit. Lesson number 2, The congressman believed in bridges. He knew that an opportunity, no matter how big or small, meant the difference between life or death and a person's matriculation in this world. As we traveled together, I always met someone who was grateful that the congressman took interest in their life. And had he not, they would not have had the blessings and opportunities that they have today. Lesson number 3, value your friendships. He said that he would always be obedient to God because he knew that God worked through us in a spiritual capacity. What does this mean? The congressman and I enjoyed talking about carpentry. It's through our conversations that I learned an important lesson. Always check on your friends. Be the foundation for your friend when their house collapses, and be the roof for your friend when the rain comes. Lesson number 4, pass the ball. The congressman once told me that a true leader shares leadership. To get the ball down the court to win, share the ball. Give others the opportunity to lead. He exercised this lesson by looking to the youth for answers and choosing people to join him on his mission to help all Americans. We saw this in his committee assignments. Lesson number 5, which is hard for me. Work through your pain. The congressman was one of the hardest workers that I ever knew. When we traveled through the country in his mission to fight for the soul of our democracy, when he spoke on the House floor or traveled to a community center to talk to children, he was always in pain. However, when it was time to address his audience, the congressman transformed into a spiritual warrior. It was as if he had received the cure to his pain. No armor, no sword, no shield, but God's weapon of unconditional love for people. However, when he was on stage, his cure was that he knew he would be truly speaking to a generation he would never see. For days, I've been trying to figure out the 5th lesson, but I finally got it. If he were here, the congressman would tell me, Harry, remember to be greater than your pain. Transcend darkness and become the light to lead to better days. Continue to fight when all hope is lost. And if one leg doesn't work, use a walker. At least you will be standing. In my spirit, the congressman wants me to say one last thing to the staff. Thank you for everything you gave me. I could not have been the leader without you. To Vernon, thank you for being the general of my army. To family, thank you for letting me be Bobby. To my wife, thank you for your love and support. To my children, when you get lonely and you need me there, watch The Lion King and remember my favorite part when they say, he lives in you. I will always live in you. Timeless. Thank you.
To God be the glory. To God be the glory. This man lived for God, and he is of God. I have come here today to say two simple words. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks to everyone. The 7th Congressional District, he loved Baltimore City. Baltimore, thank you for everything that you did to pour into him, to make him who he was, to allow him to be and to rise to greatness. Howard County, he once and always said whenever he spoke to you, it is my honor and privilege to serve you, and he meant every word of it. To Baltimore County, he enjoyed serving you as well, so thank you so much for supporting and working with him. To all his congressional colleagues, it was a distinct, he considers you his mentor. President Obama, he was so proud. He was so proud to stand with you and for you early, to be your co-chair here in the state of Maryland, to serve as your chief defense attorney on the House Oversight Committee, and to make sure that you and your administration were all right. But you didn't have any challenges like we got going on now. So his job became harder over time. That being said, President Clinton, he was absolutely honored to be your friend. He counted you amongst his friend. When he invited you, you showed up. One of the proudest moments of his life when you came right here to New Psalmist Baptist Church and worshiped with us. We thank you so much. Secretary Clinton, oh my goodness. He spent many an hour defending you against spurious claims. And now he had to go on to actually work to fight for the soul of our democracy against very real corruption. I want you all to know that it was not easy. What Congressman Chairman Cummings did was not easy. And it got infinitely more difficult in the last months of his life when he sustained personal attacks and attacks on his beloved city. And while he carried himself with grace and dignity in all public forums, it hurt him. Because one thing you do not know about Congressman Cummings, he was a man of soul and spirit. He felt very deeply. He was very empathetic. It was one of his greatest gifts. And it was one of the sources of his ability to be a public servant and a man of the people. And so with that, to have the week's activities basically be laid out in such a glorious way, to be a tribute to the great man that he was, to the great legacy that he left, to be the first African American congressman to ever lie in state in the U.S. Capitol. Now, it is true that he dictated every aspect of his service today. And he would have told me, Maya, I don't want to service at the U.S. Capitol. But I felt like very strongly that they were trying to tear him down. And we needed to make sure that he went out with the respect and the dignity that he deserved. This was a man of the utmost integrity. Do you hear me? He had integrity. And he cared about our democracy. He cared about our planet. He cared about our community. He wanted to make sure that we left a society worthy of our children. So I just want to tell you that it also wasn't easy in the last months of his life because he absolutely was in pain. But get this, he was a walking miracle. Do you know that he was diagnosed with a life-threatening illness more than 25 years ago? He was given 6 months to live more than 25 years ago. And he kept going. He kept fighting. He kept standing. He kept working. And it was my distinct honor and privilege to be his spouse. Just 2 days before he died, he was in a lot of pain. He could no longer walk. And he kept saying, "I'm tired. I'm ready to go." And so the wonderful world-class staff at the Johns Hopkins Hospital at the Johns Hopkins University, they came in and they said that we wanted to give him sunshine therapy. And so they rolled his entire medical bed out of the room into the 14th floor, the rooftop of Johns Hopkins Hospital, where they land the helicopters for life-threatening situations. And we rolled out, and it was a glorious, and it was a beautiful day with light everywhere. The sun was shining, and it was just absolutely glorious. It was God's day. And he looked out over the inner harbor, Harbor East. He looked toward South Baltimore, his beloved South Baltimore, where he grew up in his early years. He looked toward the downtown, and he looked toward the west side, and he said, "Boy, have I come a long way." And he absolutely came a long way. And so with that, I just want to say thank you for pouring into him. Thank you for supporting him. Thank you for allowing him to serve you, because it was his greatest an honor and privilege to work on behalf of all of you. The family has been heartened. Our pain has been lessened by all the love we have received from everyone here in this city, the state, the region, and the world. And so I just want to say thank you. God is good. Take care.
Elijah's life touched many. And we gather here today not for, as Maya said, a sprint to the finish line, but we gather here to pay homage to a man who meant so much to all of us. Two individuals thought it not robbery to make this morning a morning spent not in mourning, but in sharing with the family and the friends of this congressman. I speak of the one and only Honorable William Jefferson Clinton, 42nd President of the United States, and the Honorable Barack Obama, the 44th President of the United States. They're going to come in that order and share their thoughts now. Will you greet President William Clinton?
Thank you very much, especially for the decades of guidance and genuine friendship you gave to Elijah. It is true that almost exactly 21 years ago, he invited me to New Psalmist on the Sunday before the election. And I remember, I loved that you introduced the staff, because we'd all be dead without the people that are helping us. But if you're president, your staff is always trying to tell you why you shouldn't do something or you shouldn't go somewhere. I remember this very well. They said, it's Tuesday, Sunday before the election. Why would you go? I get why you want to go to an African-American church, but why would you go to Baltimore? I mean, come on. They're so good to you. They always vote for you. And if we do it, we'll know whether it was right or not. And so the bishop rolls out the red carpet. Thousands of people were there. And you may remember we got in some trouble, didn't we? We got in some trouble. People criticized us for having a get out the vote event in a church. They said it was inappropriate. And as I remember, Elijah reminded people that our constitutional rights, including the freedom of religion, the freedom of assembly, the freedom of speech, depended on people giving voice to them in elections. End of debate. Then I got to listen to Elijah talk that day. You talk about a lousy deal. It was, I had to follow both the bishop and Elijah Cummings. And at least I'm getting in ahead of you and President Obama today. In my old age, I'm the warm-up act. I'm glad to do it. Anyway, Elijah was great. And he ended with his quiet and reasoned and rhythmic voice growing into his booming voice by quoting that wonderful verse from the 40th chapter of Isaiah. They who wait upon the Lord will have their strength renewed. They will run up with wings as eagles. They will run and not go weary. They will walk and faint not. And he just kept doing more and more. The crowd was going crazy. Over the course of these last few days, I've had the chance to think a lot about Elijah's life. He really did sort of mirror Isaiah, who had one of the greatest one-liners in the history of human affairs. When the Lord asked, whom shall I send and who will go for me? Isaiah said, here am I, Lord, send me. Elijah Cummings spent a whole life saying, send me. An entire lifetime. He's not even a teenager when he hauls down to the swimming pool and joins a group to integrate it, and for his trouble gets banged on the head with a glass bottle, leaving him a lifetime scar, which he wore with honor. And then the people of Baltimore sent him to Annapolis, and then you sent him to Washington. On behalf of the rest of the nation, I'd like to thank you. You did a good thing. And then I was looking over all the things that he worked on just in the 4 years we were together. He was elected the year I was reelected, 1996. He had this amazing array of interests. But we all know now that at least until certain things happen, his legacy is how ardently he honored his oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. I think he did it for a lot of reasons. He loved the fact that his parents' humble lives made his a great American story. And he loved that it confirmed his faith, but he knew that without the Constitution, the laws that were passed under it, the rights that were guaranteed by it, and the abuses it was designed to prevent, without that Constitution, he would not have been in Congress. And so he said to himself, I am certain every day I will not let this promise be sullied. And he did his best. And while doing his best and fighting his heart out, sticking up for Hillary and lots of other people, many of whom were voiceless and weak and will never be known. While doing all that, he actually made, in one of the most partisan periods in our country's history, a lot of Republican friends. Why did he do that? How did he do that? I think he did it because everybody could see he was the real deal. He was doing what he believed. His heart was in it. And I think he did it because no matter how hard he fought and how passionately he argued, he tried to treat everybody the way he wanted to be treated, the way he thought America should be treated. You know, you can't run a free society if you have to hate everybody you disagree with. I mean, sooner or later, if you've been married 45 years and both of you are thinking, you're going to have a disagreement or two. Sooner or later, if you're in a business or a team or in a campaign and you're thinking, you're going to have disagreements. He believed that he should treat people the way he wanted to be treated. And he believed if everybody accepted his broad, endearing, inclusive definition of one America, where we respect our differences and think what we have in common matters more, and we all live under the same set of rules, and we all believe that under those rules, those of us who have more than we need should do more to help those who don't have enough, everything would work out okay. Now, that's what he believed. And being friends, he was so proud that he could help resolve the personal spat between his Republican congressional friend and new member of the Democratic caucus. But he believed. So here's what I want to leave you with. Elijah spent his working life in the tradition of Isaiah. He went again and again and again. But I think in his lasting legacy to us, we should think again about the prophet Elisha for this reason. He was about to be killed for his ardent promotion of his faith. He hid in a cave, either within or next to Mount Sinai. He received a message from God to go up and stand on top of the mountain and wait for the voice of God to speak to him. So look, he'd already had a pretty hard time. Just like at the end of Elijah's life, he's already had a pretty hard time. You got to go through this too. So there's Elijah standing on the mountain. And a huge wind came, so strong it broke the rocks of the mountain. The Lord was not in the fire. And then, what does the scripture say? Of all the pomp, all the circumstance, all the glory, for the still small voice. In the quiet times at night and in the morning, when we need courage, when we get discouraged and we don't know if we can believe anymore, we should hear him. Keeps us going, keeps us grateful, keeps us happy, and keeps us moving. Thank you.
First Lady and the new Psalmist family. To the Cummings family. The seeds on good soil. The parable of the sower tells us, by persevering, produce a crop. The seed on good soil. Elijah Cummings came. His parents were sharecroppers from the South. They picked tobacco and strawberries, and then sought something better in this city, South Baltimore. And Robert worked shifts at a plant, and Ruth cleaned other people's homes. They became parents of 7. And I knew it was true. And I felt better for it. Sometimes people say they're praying for you, and you don't know. They might be praying about you, but you don't know if they're praying for you. But I knew Miss Ruth was telling the grit, but also that kindness and that faith to their son. As a boy, Elijah's dad made him shine. I may not fly, but you will fly one day. We can't afford it right now, but you will fly. As grandmother, Elijah did not wait. Against all odds, Elijah earned his degrees. He learned about the rights that all people in this country are supposed to, and his people had their God-given rights. And from the State House to the House of Representatives,